The Jewel of Seven Winds. The night market of Constantinople hummed with whispers of the impossible. Between stalls of spiced cardamom and shimmering silks, the story passed from merchant to beggar, from sailor to scholar. The Sultan's most precious treasure had vanished from the locked chamber of the Topkapi Palace, guarded by 40 janissaries and sealed by the Grand Vizier's own hand. Elif had heard the rumors while she was delivering bread to the hammam that morning. She dismissed them as she dismissed most palace gossip, the idle entertainment of those who had nothing better to contemplate than the affairs of the powerful. But that was before the old woman found her. She appeared as Elif was closing her father's bakery, a hunched figure draped in layers of faded cloth, her face hidden beneath a yashmak embroidered with symbols Elif had never seen. The woman's eyes, however, were impossible to ignore. One was milky white, seeing nothing, while the other gleamed like polished amber and seemed to see everything. "You are the one," the woman said, her voice like wind through autumn leaves. Elif's hand tightened on the wooden door. "I'm no one, just a baker's daughter." "You are Elif who climbs to the rooftops when the moon is full. Elif who speaks to the street cats in their own tongue. Elif who once found a wounded bird and sang it back to life without knowing she was singing magic." The words struck Elif like cold water. She had told no one about the bird, not even her father. It had happened 3 summers ago, and she had convinced herself it was coincidence, fever dream, nothing more. "How do you—" "I am Aisha the seer, last of the 40 winds, and I need a thief. Not to steal, child, to steal back." Against every instinct of self-preservation, Elif found herself letting the woman inside. Over bitter coffee, Aisha told her tale. The stolen treasure was no ordinary jewel. It was the Kalp-i-Yedi Rizgar, the heart of 7 winds, an ancient stone that held the breath of jinn, bound centuries ago by Elif's own ancestor, a sorceress named Layla the Windcaller. The jewel maintained the balance between the mortal world and the realm of spirits. Without it, that boundary was already beginning to fray. "Look," Aisha commanded, gesturing to the window. Elif peered out into the night. At first, she saw nothing unusual, just the familiar street, the fountain, the fig tree that grew beside the mosque. Then she noticed the shadows. They moved wrong, flowing upward like smoke, reaching toward the stars with grasping fingers. In the distance, she heard what sounded like whispers in a language that made her teeth ache. "The jinn are waking," Aisha said, "and if they fully breach our world, Constantinople will burn in fires that cannot be quenched. The empire will fall to chaos." "Why me?" Elif asked, though she part of her already knew the answer. "Because you carry Layla's blood. Because only her line can touch the jewel without being consumed by it. And because the one who stole it was once your friend." Elif's heart stopped. "Murat," Aisha nodded, "the Grand Vizier's son. He was promised the jewel would grant him power, power to rival even the Sultan. He does not know what he has truly taken, or that it is already destroying him from within." Murat. They had been children together, playing in the streets before his father rose to power, before the gulf of their stations grew too wide to cross. She had not spoken to him in 5 years, but she remembered his kindness, the way he had once defended her brother from older boys, the stories he told of adventures in distant lands. "If I refuse?" Aisha's expression was grave. "Then I will find another, though there is no time, and they will likely fail. The rifts grow wider each hour. Already the dead are restless in their graves." Elif closed her eyes. She thought of her father sleeping upstairs, of her young brother Kemal with his gap-toothed smile, and of all the ordinary people who would suffer if the boundary between worlds truly collapsed. She thought of Murat, poisoned by ambition and false promises. "Tell me what I must do."
The plan was audacious to the point of madness. The jewel was no longer in the palace. Aisha's visions revealed that Murat had taken it to the ancient cistern beneath the city, to an ancient temple where the barrier between worlds was thinnest. There he was attempting a ritual to bind the jewel's power to himself, not understanding that the jinn within were slowly claiming his soul in exchange. Aisha gave Elif a small pouch of salt blessed by 7 imams, a knife forged from a fallen star, and most importantly, the true name of the jinn trapped in the jewel. Speak the name, and the spirit will hear you. But be warned, jinn are older than truth and more cunning than serpents. One mistake, and it will twist your words into chains. That night, Elif climbed down into the city's hidden depths. The cistern was vast, its forest of columns disappearing into darkness, water reflecting the dim light of her lantern like scattered stars. She moved silently, as she had learned to move across rooftops, her bare feet finding purchase on slick stone. Deep within the cistern, she found a temple. It was a ruin from before the Romans, before even the Greeks, a place of older powers. Strange glyphs covered the walls, and the air itself seemed to pulse with energy that made her skin prickle. At the center, Murat stood before an altar, the jewel clutched in his hands. It glowed with sickly green light, and dark veins had spread up his arms like poison. "Murat," she called softly. He spun, and she barely recognized him. His eyes burned with fever, his face gaunt and pale. "Elif? No, you're a trick. The jinn trying to distract me. Look at yourself." She stepped closer, raising her lantern. "Look at what it's doing to you." For a moment, something of the boy she knew flickered in his expression. He glanced down at his corrupted hands, and fear cracked through his fevered determination. "I only wanted... The empire is crumbling, Elif. My father says the Sultan is weak, that enemies circle us like wolves. I thought if I had power, real power, I could protect." "You were lied to," Elif said gently. "That jewel doesn't grant power. It's a prison, and the prisoners are escaping." As if in answer, the jewel pulsed brighter. The shadows in the temple deepened, taking shape. A voice like grinding stone spoke. "So, another daughter of the wind-caller comes to us. How delicious." The jinn manifested as smoke and flame, towering above us, its form constantly shifting, now a many-armed giant, now a serpent, now something with too many eyes. The temperature plummeted, and frost spread across the ancient stones. The jinn hissed, "We cannot release us. He lacks the blood right. But you could break the bonds, daughter of Layla. Free us, and we shall grant you anything. Riches, power, the love of kings." Elif's hand went to the star-forged knife. "I know what you'd grant me. The same thing you've granted everyone who trusted jinn. Ashes
and sorrow." The jinn laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Then try to bind us again. We have had centuries to weaken our chains. The jewel cracks, your ancestors' magic fails. Soon we shall be free regardless, and your city will burn." It was a bluff. It had to be. But looking at the jewel in Murat's hands, Elif could see hairline cracks spreading across its surface. The jinn was right. Time was running out. She thought of Aisha's words, of the true name, but something else occurred to her, something the old woman had said. "You sang it back to life without knowing you were singing magic." "Murat," she said, "give me your hand." He stared at her, confused and frightened. But he reached out, and she took his corrupted hand in hers. It was cold as ice, the skin rough with scales that shouldn't exist. She could feel the jinn's influence coursing through him like poison. Then Elif began to sing. It was no spell Aisha had taught her, no formal incantation. It was the song her mother had sung to her as a child, the lullaby that spoke of wind over water, of birds returning home, of the sun rising over the Bosphorus. She sang of small, true things, like the smell of bread baking, the sound of her brother's laughter, the feeling of clean sheets on a hot summer night. The jinn screamed, and Elif understood why. These ancient spirits were creatures of grand passions and epic hungers. They understood empires and disasters, wars and cataclysms, but they could not comprehend these small human joys, these gentle loves. The song was a language they had forgotten, a power they could not counter. The dark veins on Murat's arms began to recede. The jewel's sickly glow shifted, steadied, and Elif felt something else, a presence within the stone that was not the jinn, not entirely. It was Layla, her ancestor, a fragment of the wind color preserved in her own spell like a message in a bottle cast across centuries. Layla's voice joined Elif's song, resonating from the jewel. The two voices, separated by generations but bound by blood, harmonized. The jinn screamed and thrashed, smoke and flame lashing out, but Elif stood firm. She thought of everyone she loved, everyone she would protect, and poured that love into her song. Murat added his voice, cracked, rough, but desperate with hope. Then, impossibly, she heard others. Aisha, from wherever she waited above, her father waking from sleep, her brother, 100 voices, 1,000, all the ordinary people of Constantinople who loved this city and each other, their hopes and dreams resonating through the magical connection Elif had opened. The jinn could not withstand it. With a final furious scream, the spirit retreated into the jewel. The fracture sealed. The green glow faded to a soft, steady blue. Elif caught the jewel as it fell from Murat's hands, and it was warm to her touch, welcoming. She understood now what Layla had done. She had not simply imprisoned the jinn, she had created a boundary, a threshold, a place where two worlds could touch without consuming each other. The jewel was not a cage, but a door, and it required someone to guard that door, to sing to it, to remind it why the worlds must remain separate. Murat collapsed, and Elif caught him. He was weak, but the corruption had faded. "I am sorry," he whispered. I was such a fool." "We're all fools sometimes," Elif said. "The question is what we do after." They emerged from the cistern as dawn broke over Constantinople. Aisha waited at the entrance, her face lined with relief. "You did what Layla herself could not. You found a way to heal the boundary rather than simply maintain it. The jewel is stronger now than it has been in centuries."
"What happens now?" Elif asked, cradling the jewel carefully. "Now you become its keeper, as Layla was, as I have tried to be, though I lacked the blood for the full bond." Aisha smiled. "You will have a normal life, your bakery, your family, but when the moon is full, you will sing to the jewel, and it will sing back. You will guard the boundary, and the boundary will guard you." Murat, leaning on Elif's shoulder, spoke hoarsely. "I will tell my father everything. The things I did cannot be hidden, but perhaps with the truth some good can come. Perhaps the Sultan will understand that there are greater threats than political rivals." Elif looked out over the city as the sun painted the domes and minarets gold. The shadows moved correctly now, falling where they should. The whispers had ceased. In the distance she heard the morning call to prayer, and beneath it the city waking, vendors opening stalls, children laughing, boats on the water. "I'm still just a baker's daughter," she said. Aisha's good eye gleamed with amusement. "You are Elif the wind-caller now, guardian of the boundary, keeper of the heart of 7 winds. You are both baker's daughter and something more, as it should be. The greatest magic is always rooted in the ordinary." In the years that followed, Elif did indeed live what seemed an ordinary life. Her father's bakery prospered. Kemal grew tall and strong. Murat, having confessed everything, was pardoned by a sultan wiser than many knew, and he devoted himself to protecting the city's ancient secrets. And on full moon nights, Elif would climb to the rooftops with the jewel in her hands and sing songs of wind and water, of bread and laughter, of all the small true things that make life worth protecting. The jinn, imprisoned in their jewel, listened to her songs and remembered what they had forgotten. And though they still dreamed of freedom, they no longer hungered to burn the world. They had been reminded that even in captivity there could be beauty. And Constantinople, the city of 2 worlds, remained standing, guarded not by armies or walls, but by a baker's daughter who had learned that the strongest magic is love, and the truest power is knowing what you fight for. The jewel of 7 winds pulsed softly in the darkness, a steady heartbeat, and the boundary held.